are really short. I counted about 20 seconds on that first one.
There's never enough time. So thank you. Normally, I'm going to get y'all to stop now. So normally we would get to a part coming up in this talk where I would pause and have an identified person from a table either come up and write them on a post-it board or call out some of the issues that we would type on and add. Since the session after this is a workshop to deal with those issues, I'm going to not do that today, and let you save the output of those two pieces, your self-reflection as well as your small group work, to save for the workshop, okay? So I just want you to know where that's going. Here are some of the value domains that have been previously identified. And remember, the first part of this talk is determining value. The second part is going to be disseminating that story. So let's just think about accreditation status again. There are many people that may not understand the cycle or the process or its connectivity to other aspects. If you're at an academic center, the LCME or ACGME, or the state-based status or state domains, if those that are important, or that there are specific levels of performance and that you might be accredited, but accredited with commendation, an old phrase about exemplary on particular domains. And again, if there's a benchmark status that you could explain to your leaders, you want to identify it during the value stage, so you can say, what percentage got commendation or what percentage that match you if you're a medical education company or a state society or an academic center, etc. So that you can put it into context for yourself and for the people that you'll ultimately present to. Obviously, there's an image or a brand. So they may not know what you do to protect it. I'll also come up again later related to fax laws and email laws or to how the logo is utilized, right? So it depends on the size of your organization. That may not make sense because it may be centrally controlled and the organization may be so large that that makes a ton of sense to you and the role you play that they may not think CME does, but it does, and how brochures are put together and all that advertising that might be seen as through brochures. So how do you impact the brand? I'll bring that up again later, related to things like tabloids and school best doctors and rankings. They may not know that in some organizations, I'll use ours as an example, more physicians interact with Hopkins through the CME office than through any other mechanism in any given year. More physicians interact with Hopkins through the CME office than any other mechanism during the year. More nurses interact with Hopkins through the CME offices than any other way. So we have a significant, we're either shaping the brand, creating the brand, modifying the brand, or harming the brand if we don't do what we're supposed to do correctly, and the same applies to your shop if you think about it. So how you attract attention, how you deal with satisfaction, right? Price Ganey sort of evaluation of hospital stays is a bit of a satisfaction survey. This is not important, which a lot of our field has moved away from, thinking that we have to get out of a warm seat, but satisfaction scores are still important in the overall concept of what we do. There might be research issues, okay? So do you do education research, okay? If you do research in general, let's say you're at a teaching hospital or an academic center, or you might do research as a professional medical society as well, right? Bringing in money in this domain might be seen as a diversification. It's a new way of bringing in money. It might come from ARC, might come from National Library of Medicine, might come from other resources for educating, for providing funds related to education. So that's seen as your, again, smart business folks bringing value to the organization. How about the improving outcome issue? Clearly, there are patient care and IACME, the performance improvement. But in most hospitals, not even thought about, but done routinely, is that when there are sentinel events, risk management is back to the departments to discuss those issues, and they're embedded in grand rounds. Most people aren't capturing it that way or thinking about it, and then they're struggling. How do I show value of things like grand rounds and case conference? When in fact, they're tied intimately to event rates that occur. Not every week, not every month, but a significant number of them throughout the course of a year or several years are actually tied to events that are occurring on campus. And the same thing is true with the stories out of the other conferences. I know a lot of people struggle with how do I get something out of case conference or M&M or tumor board. Well, the output is the output. the output is the patient outcome, how the team came together, educated each other about how it applies to this particular patient and their tumor, and what we're going to actually do for that patient. And it can be presented back to the CME office as a summary of the discussion without the patient's name involved, so no HIPAA breach whatsoever, but then be potentially available to you as an outcome of how that session and discussion led to improvement in patient care and outcome. The rest on the slide I'll come back to under other topics. I'll skip leadership for now. There's obviously faculty development. Again, if you're at an academic center, a professional society, or teaching hospital, this might be important to you. Teaching skills and presenting skills. You may not know, but back in Flexner's day, when he wrote the report, there was a shift in mentality at that time. People weren't quite sure who should be providing education to this country's health providers. And a couple of leaders in the field thought they had identified the answer, and that answer has persisted until only recently, and in fact, it hasn't been explicitly addressed, which is why you find a barrier in a lot of places related to what I'm about to say. What was identified 100 years ago was that the best teacher was the content expert researcher. Is that true? Does that person have any teaching skills or any ability or knowledge in adult ed or how to transfer what they do? Why do we see, even today then, right, the persistence of the individual who is absolutely the content expert, who stands up with content-dense slides, slide after slide after slide, with 100% accurate information, but no ability to move the audience? Right? Because it was established that they are the best educators. We now know that's not true. So the role that CME can play in migrating the whole health system forward will be useful. And obviously the tie into things like core competencies and related issues as well. I would just tie in here the point that you can also look at things like licensure and MOC. And I just sat down one day with one of the business guys at the shop and said, so if we have about 2,500 full-time faculty, and in the state of Maryland they need about 25 credits per year and about $25 per credit, then that's about 1.5 million at least just in sort of direct related costs, that by doing our grand rounds and other series on campus, somebody's not paying for CME because it's being offered either for free or for near free. And if those 2,500 physicians had to go to get those credits at 25 credits, they would be gone for about 4 days. And so somewhere between $100 a day margin on their clinical practice or $1,000 a day margin on their clinical practice would be lost by them not being present. So then there's an opportunity cost of somewhere between $1 and $10 million. By us providing education on campus, right? Look at what we're doing in terms of bringing value to the institution that they were not measuring or thinking about. We may be doing the same. There are member benefits for many people, right? So one-stop shopping for a specialty. Could be added benefits at an annual meeting or within a journal. You have the tie-in to maintenance of certification, obviously maintenance of licensure that's coming, what I call MOCO, maintenance of competency. That's where it's all sliding to, right? Simulation-based and others in order to determine the person actually got it and can actually use it. And then you actually have some of the legal aspects. I don't know how many people in the audience have experienced it, but in the last 2 years, we have seen from 0 to now about 15 cases of where either by a protected subpoena or an open request in medical legal cases, the lawyers want to know, physician X attended and got credit, show us the syllabus, show us what they should have learned while there. They claim credit, which they're using for their licensure, and we think they breached that in the care of this patient. Pretty scary at first, but you know, we're so far into it, it's become almost expected now. You may be managing a conference center that you need to calculate into your value for your organization. There may be regulatory issues, and I'll come back to some of those later for some of you. This one seems to catch people off guard, at least at some places. In some businesses, they've got this well down, is the economic impact. We just decided to look and go to the Baltimore Area Convention Center and just for our little shop, ask out of all the attendees that come from outside Baltimore, what's the economic impact of Baltimore? And I can tell you, our dean, CEO, and CFO love to see this data, something they had never thought about, because they get hammered from the state all the time about what you do to contribute to the community. And nobody had really sat down and thought about it. And I would also refer you to back just this last month in April in the association meetings is an article that talks about the impact of the meeting industry. It doesn't break out CME as an individual piece, but it shows how the meeting industry is the 10th largest industry in terms of its ability to impact GDP in this country. And the players in this room are a significant piece of that. So we need to be able to think about that and use this data to communicate to our bosses and allow them to then use this data to communicate to leaders in the community about the value that we bring that will be lost, jobs and otherwise, if the CME industry is harmed in some way. Obviously, you have portfolio issues with employees, or those could be faculty or nurses or others. You have promotion issue that may apply to some of you. And you might say, how does that? Well, you know, we have a number of full professors who part of their portfolio is the lectures they've given and traveled and showing that they have an international expertise by their travel and the presentations that they've done. So it contributes. There's actually been, even at our shop, some people who have come forward for promotion that have done, 15 publications, first author, high impact, and have never given a lecture or shared any information, who have not been promoted and been given the advice, take the next 2 years and round yourself out. You're a great researcher, but if you don't do more, then we're not going to promote you. There's obviously all the partnerships that you might do, and then there is this danger word here. So I like to challenge you. So some people would say I should never include this in the talk. I've been derided for that before. So I'll start by being perfectly clear, okay? There should be no quid pro quo at any time. But it does not mean that CME can never engender a referral. A referral could be another member, a referral could be a patient, etc. Right? Physicians should refer, as it says, based upon their desire to refer a particular patient for a particular condition at a particular stage of illness, and they should be referring to who they want. You should not be doing that as part of your CME. But referrals may be secondary or tertiary outcomes. They may come and get to know me as a presenter today and sit and talk to me in the hallway. I do critical care medicine, and then suddenly decide that I'm a person that they do believe is the right person to refer a patient to. So there could be referrals that come out of this. And if you were a medical center, you might be interested in understanding it. Again, not as a direct value and not as a plan. Let's put on an activity in order to engender referrals, but as a value that comes out of providing CME that you can't control. It happens. And we actually did a quick peek at a particular issue where there was a group of physicians who had not previously attended one of our CME courses, and we decided to look over a 7-year period of time and went from 26 physicians in that particular practice who had not attended any CME activity at Hopkins to then they had rotated over about a 3-year period of time, them all attending a CME activity. And over that next 7 years, 25 of the 26 subsequently referred patients, a total of 1,760 patients for over $57 million in charges to the health system.